In 1992, I remember my pops was getting money, and Hurricane Andrew hit, right? It was a hurricane category 5 in Miami.
Right.
And he had a new business partner at the time, which was real shady and started stealing from the business, right? And then Hurricane Andrew hit and wiped out his facility, right? He had probably a 16 bay garage sitting on about 3 acres.
Mm.
And if you read the story about Hurricane Andrew, it wiped out several different homes and businesses, and lives were destroyed as a result. And we were impacted by that. So my father, in those times, there were so many insurance claims that some of these companies were actually going out of business because they didn't have enough money to support these claims, or it took years and months to ever get the money from the insurance company,
Mm.
right? So we went from basically having everything to nothing, like overnight. And I remember my father had a new family at this time, and I remember that my father would have to shake his pockets to give me lunch money.
Mm.
So when you go from a kid from having absolutely everything to pretty much nothing, you talk about rock bottom.
Mm.
He was at rock bottom. I was at rock bottom as a result, but I was used to a certain lifestyle. And I had this image to portray, right? Everybody knew me. I remember they would call me the Fresh Prince because I'll be out there every week with the new clothes, the polo, like, man, nigga, you be stunning, you know? And this is the kind of image and the kind of reputation I always wanted for myself, which is a problem because in some points I was living for people. You know, I was wanting respect from people that really didn't even know me well.
Mm.
And when my father started shaking his pockets to give me lunch money, it got to a point where he couldn't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I started getting free lunch. Now, you and I, Joe, we old school. You remember how it was in those days when you had to punch in that code to get that free lunch?
Mm.
You know,
Yep.
you got your homeboys in the line looking at you. You understand? And
Yep.
they seeing you got to put in that code for the free
Yeah.
lunch. So I was embarrassed. And what happened was my father's new family didn't embrace me and my sister very much. I have an older sister who's 5 years older than me,
Mm.
and things just got real tense in the house. So my sister went off and got her own place and told me to move in with her and that she would take care of me. Right. And I bounced around from house to house after the divorce. And I was really looking for stability at this point. And my sister wanted to offer that.
Mm.
So I moved in with my sister, bro. And one thing about living with my sister is she's gonna do things for you, bro, but she's also gonna throw it in your face, right?
Yeah.
So my sister started handling me as though I was her butler, right? And she would tell me, "Hey, go take out the trash, clean the house, and pick up my dry cleaning, wash my car." Like she was
Mm.
extra. And I got to a point, I was like, "Listen, man, you're not my mama, bro. You my sister. I'm not gonna be your butler." And
Mm.
she's like, "I will go get a job." And then I was like, all right. She goes, you need to start helping out around here paying some bills. You don't like what I'm asking you to do, go get a job. So at this stage in my life, I was a teenager, maybe about 14, 15 years old. And the first attempt that I went to get a job to be gainfully employed, I went to McDonald's and I filled in the application. The manager came out. He was like, listen, you have all the qualifications to get this job. I would hire you on the spot. The problem is in the state of Florida, you have to be at least 16 years old to be legally employed.
Yeah.
They couldn't hire me. So I went to the next best thing. You know, Miami's the closest city to the water, as you know. The port of Miami is a real thing. And
Mm.
about 80 to 90% of the drugs valet park into the ports of Miami and they
Mm.
get distributed throughout the United States. So the opportunity for me to sell drugs, Joe, was endless.
Right.
Everyone I knew had access to it. Most of my dogs were already trapping. They were already getting money. And they're like, yo, they needed that little young hustler on the team. And I was that guy. Right. So I started selling drugs. I started with marijuana, and because it was my sister's house that I was living in, I will host all these skit parties and I'll just trap out the house, bro. You know, hand in hand combat. People come over. I had the vibe, the atmosphere, weed, liquor everywhere, music, you know, and I didn't even have to like be on the street with it. I would trap out the house. So money started flowing, right? And then my sister and I still was bumping heads. And from that point, you know, as I said, I'm Haitian. I got involved with like this Haitian cartel, if you will. And I went from selling weed to now I'm starting to traffic. I'm starting to go up and down the East Coast, mostly through Miami and Jacksonville was one of my frequent stops. And I started bringing drugs up and down the East Coast. And then I got into situations where, you know, one of these guys owed me money and I went to go see him. I had to kick the door down, came in the house with guns, laid everybody down. And my homeboy who I was with, you know, he was a little messy with it. And the gun went off in the apartment of the people we went to go rob or actually collect from. And we stormed out the house. Moments later, somebody radioed us in because, of course, a gun went off in the house. So the neighbors called the police, gave the description of our car, and I put the police on like a high speed chase